Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great beginning to your new week out there so far. We do have a lot to go over in this morning's video. The first thing we'll speak on is current conditions, current outlooks. Then we'll go over today's weather in general as far as what's going to happen. There's two features that's really dominating the weather pattern, two upper level lows, and this will bring a risk of strong to severe storms across areas of the eastern U.S. once again, and then we'll have a chance of strong to severe storms for areas of like Texas, maybe a little bit into New Mexico also. We actually have an enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5 for very large hail, and there's a pretty decent tornado threat also. So we'll speak on all this, we'll get detailed, we'll zoom into individual states for you folks as far as who could see the worst weather, most impactful weather for today. After we get done discussing that, we'll move ahead and speak on the days to come and the pattern coming up throughout the rest of the work week into this weekend. And I do think we're going to have some flooding risk across the southern tier of the country. We could have rounds of strong to severe storms. Am I seeing any kind of crazy, significant, severe weather this week? I am not, but I do think each day will bring its own threats of severe weather, especially for tomorrow. So we'll speak on all of it, and then we'll let you guys get on your way to enjoy your rest of your Monday. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below so I can do that and so others have an opportunity to do so too. And of course, as I always say on a Monday morning, I'll get caught up with all the comments and questions, prayer requests that you guys left below the video throughout the weekend sometime this afternoon. Typically don't get to those over the weekend. The weekend is a time where obviously I spend some more extra time with my family, go to church, and I'm outdoors a whole lot. So, you know, just ain't jammed in front of a computer as much, if you know what I mean. So let's get rocking and rolling. So this is the water vapor loop. You can see the two features on the map pretty well. I mean, you got this spin right here, and you got a bit of a spin right out here in the western U.S. These are two upper level lows, and both of these features are pretty much influencing the weather pattern, kind of jamming up the jet stream, if you will. So flow around this is going like that. You can see it swirling. And I don't know if I said this, but this is the water vapor loop. So the watercolors you see on your screen indicates more moisture in the atmosphere. It doesn't always indicate what's going on at the surface, but a lot of times it does. And the more dulled out colors, almost the black, darkish gray, that is drier air in the atmosphere. So this is swirling around. It's been hanging out over the same general area for quite some time. I'm sure that my folks here in areas of Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky are screaming at the sky, just ready to get rid of these clouds and cooler temperatures. It'll eventually move out the way over the next couple of days. But you know, it's wild here in the Carolinas, which is where I live. I live in central South Carolina. The western half of the state is very cool. And then the far eastern sections of like North Carolina and the coastal areas of South Carolina is pretty warm, kind of an early summer type feel out there for your Monday morning. And that is because flow is wrapping around this, and then once it gets on this side of the upper level low, it surges up like that. So it's bringing in a lot of that warm air off the coast of the southeast, off the Atlantic, and it's surging up the eastern seaboard all the way up pretty much the I-95 corridor, all the way up into southern New England. And then around here, you got the back inflow. So this is actually bringing in some cooler, somewhat drier air around the upper level low. We call this a return flow. And then you got this feature out here, and it's kind of going like this. And then inside the actual upper level low, it twirls around like that. And this just brings more moist air with it and things like that. And this also brings an enhanced flow around the bottom edge of this upper level low. So the jet's kind of buckling like that, bring some flow up into this area along with some moisture. So that's why we're going to have a severe weather threat in this area today, and we're going to have a severe weather threat in this area of the eastern U.S. today because of this return flow of moist air. Not going to be much on this side because, you know, you have the cooler, more stable air. So hope that makes sense. You can see what's going on pretty well on water vapor loop. I love looking at it at certain times of the year. It shows the pattern very well, and it definitely does this morning. So watches, warnings, and advisories. We do have flood watches up, and this is really, this area of flood watches right here in the green is really what's happening over the next 24 hours. But this area down here in Arkansas, Louisiana, eastern Texas is really what's going to unfold over the next 48 hours. I think it's going to get very rainy down here, very stormy, especially into tomorrow. We do have some red flag warnings in that hot pink color in areas of Minnesota, North Dakota. We have some dense fog advisories in areas of the Mid-Atlantic, the Ohio Valley, and even some winter weather alerts. Winter weather advisories in this purple, winter storm warnings up for areas in the pink, and this goes all the way down to the Rockies. We got winter storm watches in the teal color here in the Rockies of Colorado, and winter storm warnings up for even the higher elevations of New Mexico. So some appreciable snowfall totals will fall, and this is because these swirls bring their own cold air aloft. Ask our neighbors up here in Indiana and Illinois and Kentucky how the weather's been over the weekend. It's been cool. It's because these features bring their own cool air. So not very cold, but definitely colder in the upper levels of the atmosphere. That's why they call it upper level lows or upper troughs. So as far as the severe weather outlook today, we do have a risk of severe weather across the eastern U.S. Now, this isn't too significant or anything, just another marginal risk across areas in the mid-Atlantic. As far south as eastern North Carolina, as far as north is up here to Cleveland, Erie, and Buffalo. It includes sections of PA, West Virginia, all of Maryland, and pretty much cuts right through Delaware in areas of the Tidewater and the Delmarva. We do have a level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather down here in Florida. But this is the highlighted area for today. It seems like we were dealing with this about 10 to 15 days ago also, maybe a little bit closer to us. But anyways, an enhanced risk for Hobbs down the Midland. Looks like it includes like Fort Stockton also. This is in the orange area, level 3 out of 5 enhanced. The slight risk area is in the yellow, level 2 out of 5. And then the dark green is a level 1 out of 5. So we're probably going to get some nasty supercells in this area right in here. And the tornado threat is at a 5% risk. So in the brown area, 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in the given location. And then in the green area, there's a 2% risk. The wind threat, it's could be decent in a day. In the yellow area, which includes all of the slight and enhanced risk area, there's a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And the hail threat is quite significant. So in the red area, that's a 30% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. The yellow is a 15% risk of that. And if you live in this black outlined area, which includes all of the 30% red area and most of the 15% yellow area, Lubbock, Midland, Big Spring, down to Fort Stockton, Hobbs, you guys have a 10% risk of significant hail, which is hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. Okay, so flash flooding risk today up here in southern New England. We do have a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being exceeded. And same thing down here. Could get a lot of rain in this area. This area can be very dry at certain times of the year. But you guys have gotten a good bit of rain so far this spring. And today will be no different. You'll have rounds of strong to severe storms. So this will bring us a flash flooding threat into this area. And we have to watch out for areas of the extreme southwest also. Could have a little bit of a flash flooding threat across areas of Arizona, up to Las Vegas, Nevada, and a very small section of southeastern California. So a broader look at the southeast today. We'll zoom through this quick, and then we'll take a closer look. The first thing you'll notice is some thunderstorms popping up in eastern North Carolina and Virginia, even in the central VA. And then we got some big storms firing here in eastern to southeastern Florida. Now, we need to rain down here, but we're going to have to deal with some nasty storms also, especially along the eastern shoreline of Florida. But as far as the southeast, these are the two features to watch out for. Now, there could be some storms in southern West Virginia and western VA, the mountains of North Carolina, and the Tri-Cities of Tennessee. But I really think Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina should be mainly quiet. Storms down here in Florida, storms up here in the eastern sections of Virginia and North Carolina. Let's zoom into these areas. Let's talk about Florida first. I know you guys have been very dry. Time frame up here, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and about early to mid-afternoon, we get some storms firing up. Palm Bay down to West Palm Beach, maybe Miami, the Everglades. Strong to severe storms will fire up, and there is a 2% risk of a tornado down here. Which I didn't really show you when I looked at this. Let's look at the tornado threat. You see there is a 2% risk of a tornado for areas of Florida. So up here, not really much of one today, but wouldn't rule it out. But didn't want to leave you guys hanging. But let's go back to Florida here, 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Storms dancing around along the eastern shorelines of Florida. Could be a little bit further inland too, to Orlando, places like that. 7, 8 p.m. There's a lot of storm activity in eastern Florida today. We get into 9 p.m., 10 p.m. Storms are still around, and we could get some flash flood warnings. We need the rain. We don't need it too fast, though. But by the time we get to after midnight, things begin to calm down. But don't be surprised. You get a couple tornado warnings. And, you know, this is the area to watch in Florida today. I would watch out for, say, this area of Florida for today especially. So, moving forward here, we'll go a little bit on up the road, up 95 here, and look at Virginia and North Carolina. We could have some storms that are possible in western Virginia, eastern Kentucky, but these are the storms that look a little bit more concerning. I wouldn't worry, but I mean, there's just a marginal risk of severe weather. But storms try to form around Danville, Greensboro, Raleigh, north of Greenville, up to Richmond. Isolated strong to severe storms, and by the time we get to 4 p.m., you see they're just not everywhere, but they're just scattered about. Enough flow, enough low-level moisture getting pulled into this area, and we're just going to have a chance for widely scattered strong to severe storms in this area. And some of these could produce a quick spin up. I wouldn't rule out a tornado at all, but 6 p.m., 7 p.m., you know, we got storms around Virginia Beach, Norfolk, down to Greenville, Richmond, up to Charlottesville, Harrisonburg, and you keep this going, and by the time we get later in the evening, storms will be lingering around the tidewater, maybe the Outer Banks, but outside of that, I do think after midnight things begin to simmer down. So up here in the Northeast, the big plumes of rain continue to move into the picture. Once again, it'll be another soggy day, a soggy Monday. You know, so this is Monday afternoon. You see, you know, more of just kind of just a solid chunk of rain and bedded thunderstorms across southern New England, Long Island, especially northern half of New Jersey, into areas of New York. You just got this funnel of moisture. Those storms we just talked about for the mid-Atlantic. We got some storms over here in Ohio, PA, New York. We got scattered storms about. And this continues again to this evening. And just a soaker moving into areas of Connecticut, Long Island, New York City, northern New Jersey. And finally, this lifts north as this upper level low finally tries to get a move on here. But just a closer look at some of these areas, the D.C. area, Baltimore, 3 p.m., 4 p.m., look at those strong storms around. Could be severe, gusty winds, some hail. 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., we got some storms in northern VA moving into eastern West Virginia. We got storms just cruising over this area. So it's going to be a very stormy afternoon and evening hours across the mid-Atlantic for sure. And if we go over to West Virginia too, this is around lunchtime, getting into early this afternoon, and this is getting into about middle of the afternoon. Some storms move over Charleston, Huntington, and then they start to surge into southern Ohio. Could have a strong to severe storm up here near like Zanesville. But you continue into the late afternoon. This is get really into the evening, 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11. And we're just going to get rounds of storms up through West Virginia. Now, if we go up to PA, by about midday, we get some scattered downpours that begin to fire, and then it's pretty much fire away. At 4 p.m., we got scattered thunderstorms that really everywhere across the state of PA. Anywhere could see it. And any of these storms could produce, could hit strong to severe limits. You know, State College up to St. Mary's, Williamsport, and you continue all the way into about 9 p.m. Still rounds of heavy rain moving in. Some of these could produce flash flooding also. And look at all that rain in the western areas of PA late at night. If you like a rainy night, you might get one in areas of PA for sure. And then Ohio, we start to get into early this afternoon. I think the southern and central areas of the state begin to see rounds of strong to severe storms, especially the southern areas. I want to watch this area down here in southern to southeastern areas of the state. Seems like I just said areas about 14 times in about 30 seconds there, but these areas will have a risk of strong to severe storms, and then I do think they'll surge south to north throughout the state. So about 6, 7, 8 p.m., central Ohio could begin to experience some strong to severe storms, and this will eventually make it all the way up to Lake Erie and the shoreline up there, Toledo, Cleveland, Sandusky, hopefully I said that right. Some heavy rain will begin to pivot on through. So I want to zoom into this area. You guys here in Long Island, Connecticut, Mass, southern areas of New York could get a lot of rain. This is between now and 2 a.m. Wednesday. You know, 1 to as much as 3.5 inches of rain. Just depends on where you live, but obviously the National Weather Service likes this area the most, Connecticut and surrounding areas of Connecticut. you know, 1.5 to 2 inches of rain is possible. Just soaker, just a soaking rain over the next 24 to 36 hours in this region. Just to go a little bit on up the road to say Maine, you know, a good bit of rain could fall in southern areas of Vermont and New Hampshire also. You know, Robin, you're going to deal with a lot of heavy rain over the next 36 to 48 hours. I know you live down here in southern areas of Vermont. But here across the south central U.S., as always, we'll take a broad look at things first, and we start to get into about midday. Some supercells begin to develop, potentially along the border of New Mexico and Texas, and more so just heavy rain up here, getting thrown up into southeast Colorado, the panhandle of Texas, and Oklahoma. We start to get some scattered downpours developing in central Texas. These will lack a severe element to them. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a strong to severe storm, but a lot of the ingredients are still out to the west, especially kinematics, wind energy. But you see these thunderstorms dancing around this area. And then we start to get later at night. And I really honestly think it'll take until maybe after the sun goes down in western Texas before these storms really begin to go, I guess you would say, crazy and produce really all hazards. So, you know, this, for example, is middle of the night, like midnight out here, and these storms start to look very intense, start to take on more of a linear look, and then by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, once again, we get a complex of storms for areas along the Red River to greet you guys for your Tuesday morning. But just a closer look at this area, we'll take a look at Oklahoma first, and we get to about midday time frame is up here, 12 p.m. We get to about 2 p.m., just some areas of scattered showers, maybe a rumble of thunder. So about 5 p.m., I'd watch a couple cells trying to sneak in, you know, inside the Texas line here. Amarillo, Lubbock could have a nasty cell just west of you guys. And then we get to 7 p.m., we get to 8 p.m. Storms kind of dancing around south of Amarillo, more so closer to Lubbock as far as these severe storms. And, you know, by the time we get into later this evening, midnight, this starts to group up into just a big complex of showers and storms and just heavy rain. Flooding threat could escalate. More so just heavy rain up here in the northern areas, northern counties of the panhandle of Oklahoma, and especially Texas. But this is where we start to get the heavy rain. This is 4 o'clock in the morning in Elk City, Lawton, Childress. And the further south you get, the higher the severe weather threat. But by the time you're waking up tomorrow morning, big surge of heavy rain all the way up to Woodard, Stillwater, Oklahoma City, Norman. And the closer you get to the Red River area, the more these storms can pack a punch, hit severe limits. So, but down here, deep in Texas, southwest Texas, and areas of southeast New Mexico, we'll start off about midday. We start to get into 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., some storms could begin to develop around Hobbs, the Post, maybe Carlsbad also. These storms look particularly intense and discrete in the northern areas of this region, kind of north of the Interstate 20 corridor. And then the storms start to get going. But look, it's 10 p.m. Sun's already setting. Pecos begins to get some storms. Hobbs. And then this is when it can get pretty intense. But it's at nighttime. It's going to be, you know, there'll be a lot of storm chasers out here, but it's going to be it's going to be tough to see it. It's going to be a lightning show out here, and these storms will be dangerous because they're nocturnal. But, I mean, this is midnight. These storms are, you know, riding up north and south of the Interstate 20 corridor, heading up towards Midland, Big Spring, maybe Abilene eventually. We do have some cells trying to develop, you know, down here closer to Fort Stockton, San Angelo. You got to watch out for these. And these will have the capability of producing gigantic hail, very, very large hail, and isolated tornadoes. And by the time you're 3 a.m., 4 a.m., storms are just trailing up the interstate, moving west to east. And then we're waking up tomorrow morning to most of the activity moving off to the east, deeper into Texas. So really watch out in this region late this afternoon at the earliest, and then really into this evening, into the overnight hours. This is when things can get a little bit more serious in this area. Now, I do want to show you the updraft velocity swath, which I just realized I don't have it pulled up here. And we'll go to Texas, and we'll look at this. Let's look at that. And yeah, so you see where these colors are right into here. This is where we have more intense updrafts. So these storms that, you know, just could produce a tornado, could produce very large hail, and it's all right here in the higher risk area per the Storm Prediction Center, so it makes sense. So definitely going to get some intense thunderstorms in this area where you see the kind of streaks of color out here. So rainfall between now and 1 a.m. tonight, an inch and a half of rain is possible. Going to get a lot of it. Definitely going to get even more rain over the next 24 hours after this too. But a couple inches of rain is possible across western Texas, eastern New Mexico. But going up here into the north central U.S., it's pretty quiet there about midday this afternoon. And then once again, with just the daytime heating, instability builds, around this upper level low. We're probably going to have rounds of thunderstorms through Ohio, maybe some scattered downpours through Indiana, and eventually we get later tonight, we'll get a round of rain and storms, maybe all the way into Detroit. And then we'll get some rain thrown back into lower Michigan to start your Tuesday morning. So we're going to wake up to a pretty damp start across a lot of the areas of lower Michigan for tomorrow morning. But elsewhere, moving west, the Midwest, even the UP of Michigan, it's a pretty chill day. It's not a whole lot's going to happen. Western U.S., we continue to be influenced by this upper level low out west. So therefore, we're going to get a lot of activity, even a connection to some energy up here to the north. But just a spin out here across the Four Corners region that's centered right over the Four Corners. Just enough cold air where some of this rain will mix and just change the heavy wet snow in the higher elevations of the Rockies, New Mexico, southern Colorado, up here to Wyoming. So it'll be interesting to see. And eventually, as we're getting into tomorrow morning, could maybe could maybe Denver mix with some snow? I think it's possible. But rain. Here's a closer look at the Four Corners region. You can see the spinning moisture over the area. You can quite literally see the spin. So pretty wild stuff out here. But I will show you guys. Let's look at this. Let's look at rainfall over the next 18 to 24 hours across this area. You see it here, but check out the 48-hour snowfall. Look how much snow, the Rockies are going to get in Colorado. It's a good bit of snow, several inches to a couple feet, depending on your location. So these are temperatures today. You can see that cold pocket of air centered right over areas of the Mid-South and the Ohio Valley. You'll be jammed into the 50s, maybe in Nashville today. But around it, you got warmer air. So you can tell how these upper level lows just influence exactly what they're over. Now, around it, they influence the pattern too. But when you start to get these upper level lows deeper into the warmer season, they have a much harder time bringing widespread cooler air. But around it, it'll warm up nicely. A nice surge of warmth all the way up through the middle of the country. But we do have some cooler air over the Rockies because of this other upper level low. But we're already warming back up across the western states. The Valley of California will warm up nicely today. And it'll be a kind of a funny day across western Texas where the panhandle will be a lot more stable than southwest Texas, 50s. But, you get down here to Midland, San Angelo, Fort Stockton, 80s and potentially 90s. So wild temperature gradient there. Now, moving forward, guys, I do want to mention there is a risk of strong to severe storms for tomorrow. And listen, this is going to be a tricky day. There is once again another marginal risk up here in areas of the northeast for the same pattern, upper level lows spinning around. But we're going to start to, as we get into tomorrow and Wednesday, lose this upper level low for the most part. But we got to watch this area tomorrow. Dallas, Fort Worth, down to Houston, almost down to San Antonio, over to Shreveport. Level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather. We could get an upgrade. We'll see what happens. Level 1 out of 5 around it. And there's already a 5% risk of a tornado in this area. Shreveport, Dallas, down to Austin, College Station, 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles of any given location. And then the wind threat, 15% risk of damaging winds in the yellow. And then the hail threats. All right, you got the yellow area, which is a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch. And then down here in the black outline region, not only do you have the 15% risk, you also have a 10% risk of significant sized hail, which is 2 inch in diameter or larger. This includes Austin, Houston, College Station. So be aware of that. Let's go back to this, go back to that. And then day 3, listen, there's not even a marginal risk for day 3. But I'm not going to say I guarantee you, but I have a strong feeling that we will end up getting a marginal risk probably somewhere in this area for Wednesday. just right now, confidence, I guess, just isn't there to produce one. But I think we will get a marginal risk into this area at least as we get into, when is this, Wednesday. So right now, though, you know, they're not going for much. I will go back to day 2 and I'll show you the excessive rainfall outlook. Unfortunately, flash flooding is going to be another threat. So this is for tomorrow. Starting tomorrow morning through Wednesday morning, southern Arkansas, getting into the southern half of Mississippi, most of Louisiana, into eastern and northeastern areas of Texas. Very small section of eastern Oklahoma. In the red, we have a moderate risk of flooding. That's a 40% chance of flash flooding occurring. And then the yellow area, that's a 15% risk, which is a pretty large area going from southeast Colorado all the way to Birmingham, Alabama. So day 3, there will be a risk of flooding too. It'll just be kind of shunted to the south along the Gulf coastline, but New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, up to Hattiesburg, Gulfport, Biloxi, 15% risk of flash flooding occurring. Now looking at the pattern going ahead, this is starting tomorrow morning. This is upper level low number 1 across the eastern U.S. This is upper level low number 2 moving across the southern tier of the country at this point. So this will go on and move out the way. So produce still some rounds of thunderstorms over the next 48 to maybe 72 hours across the Northeast. But, you know, each day moving forward past a day, the severe weather threat drops for this feature because it just gains latitude, lacks dynamics. But as we get into tomorrow morning, no wonder why we have such a higher, that's not a high, but it's a higher severe weather threat across the eastern areas of Texas, because if I put my cursor over this, over that purple area, you know, you got 60 to 70 plus knots of mid-level flow, mid-level jet, in response to all the flow moving around this feature right here. And it makes sense because if you compare it to this, see how the flow's coming down just like that into this area. By the time we get into tomorrow, this feature will be closer to like right into here. So we continue to move forward here. A lot of flow over this area, overlapping a pretty moist air mass, not spread very far north, but it's definitely close enough to the south to have overlapping ingredients. By the time we start to get into Wednesday, and we'll take it to about Wednesday afternoon, you do not have as much flow. This kind of upper low begins to weaken and just kind of merges inside this ridge. But we still have, as I put my cursor over these kind of shades of bluish, purple, pink, this is where we have that mid-level flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere, kinetic energy, wind energy that supports enough push in the atmosphere to get these storms going. But you notice it loses some intensity somewhat as we get into Wednesday. Now, as we get into Thursday, as we just get deeper into the work week, it just gets more and more weird. But I will tell you, as we get into Thursday, it looks like there's still, Thursday there actually might be more flow in the atmosphere across areas of the western deep south. And we start to see a little bit more in the southeast too. So I put my cursor over this entire area. Let's just draw on this a little bit. Basically, this entire region right into here could have rounds of showers and storms. Just depends on how far north the higher dew points, the higher surface moisture surges. But I would definitely watch out for this region right in here for maybe a marginal risk at least of severe weather and just rounds of heavy rain. And then as we get into Friday, things get weird because this is like Friday evening. For example, you got this little upper feature that kind of digs down to the northeast. We still have this kind of positively tilted trough across this area. And after that, it just gets weird. Now, we still got some things to figure out for later this week. But what I can tell you here is this is for tomorrow. We got plenty of moisture. We got dew points in the 60s and 70s. That supports shower and storm activity. But if you notice, the southeast is more stable. We got the wraparound flow from this upper level low still influencing the pattern over the eastern U.S. So the return flow is bringing in surges of dry air to feel like spring for a good chunk of the week across the southeast. But, you know, as we start to move into, say, Wednesday, atmosphere begins to change a little bit. You're starting to see more darker green show up across the southeast and definitely over across the deep south. Dew points in the 60s and 70s, more moist air dominating the atmosphere at this point. And then we start to get into Thursday, even more moist air. So now we got dew points surging pretty far north up into Tennessee, Arkansas. So deep moisture for the deep south. This is going to support severe weather, or at least not severe weather, but at least chances of showers and storms across the deep south. And then we start to get into, say, Friday, and that's when it just gets weird. But what I can tell you is on Friday, on this particular run of the Euro, we still have dew points in the 60s, even some 70s, spreading all the way up into the mid-Atlantic. So, and of course, because of just enough flow throughout this region, we have enough moisture at the surface. This is just kind of the Euro. It's just going to show blobs of green, yellow, and red and orange. Watch how you have just these rounds of showers and storms. This is for tomorrow. This is for Wednesday. See all that activity for the deep south. Might calm down a little bit, but then Thursday pops off again all the way up to Arkansas, down to the deep south states. And you just see rounds of showers and storms. And then we get into Friday, and it gets different. The pattern gets different. Upper trough tries to dig down here across the northeast, might enhance things even more. But Friday looks pretty stormy across the southeast, and then we watch Saturday too. But what I can tell you, between now and 7 a.m. next Monday, around this time next Monday, a lot of rain expected. Look here in the deep south, western deep south, southern Mississippi, Louisiana, over 5 inches of rain, 6 inches, even 7 inches of rain is expected in some of these areas, which is why you have that higher flooding risk for tomorrow. And then we look across the deep south, and there is a pretty tight gradient right here. But you got to get pretty far south to get into a lot of this rain. But look at all the rain on the way for areas of Florida over the next several days. A lot of this will fall today, but there could be more of a rainy pattern even for you guys going forward. But you can see, I really think the further east you get in the southeast, the more dry it'll be earlier in the week. But as you get later in the week, closer to the weekend, moist air returns. It starts to feel more like summer, and the chances of storms return. So definitely a rainy, stormy pattern coming up for basically the deep south. North of this area, I think that it'll be relatively calm for the foreseeable future. So that's all I got. God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you again soon.